You must know what your values are and live them unapologetically. Welcome to Trigger Proof episode number 17. We're talking about self-love 101. About 2 or 3 days ago, I was on a phone call with a gentleman in Spain who enrolled in my overview experience that's coming up in Barcelona. And I asked him a specific question. I said, what is it that you want to accomplish? What is it that you want to get out of the weekend? And he paused, he stopped, and he said, I just want to fall in love with myself. And I just smiled and I thought, isn't that the holy grail? As a chiropractor, working for the last 18 years with people primarily with stress-related disorders, I have been curious to wonder what is the root cause of why they're in. A lot of times it's bad posture. A lot of times it's a sporting injury. They're just, they injured themselves. But for the people who are dealing with chronic problems, chronic pain, chronic issues, chronic anxiety levels, psychiatric problems, psychological disorders, anxieties, depressions, problems with digestion, problems with migraines, quite often we were dealing with a lack of self-love issue. If I could trace it and go all the way upstream, quite often there was a breakdown in a relationship, whether it be a romantic one or with a primary caregiver, mom or dad. And if we kept going upstream, it was a lack of connection from themselves to their positioning in the universe. And if we really went deeper, if I could be totally brutally honest, it was a lack of self-love. And I really didn't picture myself teaching this as a chiropractor. I didn't really picture myself teaching this because this show basically it's called Trigger Proof, and it's primarily dedicated to those people who are stuck in relationship limbo or career limbo or disconnection from themselves and purpose, wanting to find greater meaning, wanting to find greater power, freedom, and self-expression, and therefore heal their bodies from the inside out. And specifically, if they've been taking medications, they've been doing retreats, they've been doing all sorts of personal development work and it not working. And so I really felt frustrated in my practice, not really knowing how to reach those people in the few minutes that I had to spend with them. So gradually my career started to evolve into becoming more of a mentor and a teacher. And it was a few years ago that I gave myself permission to leave my practice and full-time and start becoming a full-time teacher and facilitator. And so I have online programs that help people connect deeper to themselves and heal their minds and bodies from the inside out. And here I am traveling around the world with my partner, and deep down inside what happened was there was a deep incongruency within the relationship. And the relationship slowly, as that truth was not revealed and it wasn't 100% congruent and I was living in a contradiction, the toxic relationship kept building to a crescendo where it all came crashing down. On March 11th of last year, we got into a really bad conflict where I actually became physically abusive. And if I was completely honest with myself, we had quite a bit of volatility and it got physical a few times, but this time it was the worst because all of a sudden now it wasn't just between us, it was a whole community of people that became aware of it. And somebody like myself who was, raised in the Iranian culture, looking good is number one. In fact, it pretty much permeated my entire existence completely unconsciously. And we were living this completely unconscious relationship and having this great deal of volatility, which brought on this immense amount of toxic shame and guilt. And so here we are in this situation where I'm now in this position where not only am I exposed to all of the parts of myself that I absolutely despise, but here's the kicker. I actually had a community of people and a small group of people that were verbalizing and attacking me based on the very things that I despised about myself. And I remember calling my friend Aura and sharing with her what was going on in my life. And she was like, oh, honey, she's Latina. She was on a previous episode. She was, oh, honey, you just have to love yourself. You just have to love yourself. And I'm looking at myself going, love myself? How the hell is that possible? How could I love myself? Number one, after doing such horrible things. And number two, how can I love myself not only when I have to deal with my own shadow, but also a community of people who were mirroring it back, and I had to face public humiliation as well. And that sent me on a tailspin of a downward spiral, which actually had me completely stop working and going into myself, hiding from the world, living in shame, and actually becoming suicidal. I thought, you know what, maybe just end it. And I remember looking in the mirror and going, how is it that I could actually love myself? What does that mean? What does it mean to love myself? First of all, who the hell am I? Who am I to love? Who am I, and how can I love that person who acted and enacted in those ways, who behaved the way that he did? How could I love that? And so began this journey of what I call my intimacy upgrade. And that dark time, that dark period of self-loathing ended up becoming a gift, because I promised myself, I said, all right, if I can figure this out, and if, by the grace of God, if I can figure this out, then I want to, first of all, make sure that I am fully regulated and this never ever happens again, number one. Number two, first of all, I have to find out, how did it happen? Number two, how can I make sure it never happens again in not only my life, but number three, how can I help other people with this exact problem? Because it turns out that the root cause of why we were both involved in a toxic dynamic, abusing each other for 4 years amongst some great times, high highs and extremely low lows of a very deep codependent relationship, a lack of self-love was present in both of us. So I went on this path of what I call the intimacy upgrade, and I went through a series of challenges facing my ego and all of these things that I'm going to share in today's show, and share with you a couple of stories of people who have actually taken those steps as well and seen some transformations in their life, with the intention of giving you the keys to the kingdom. Giving you, and when I say the keys to the kingdom, I don't mean to take this, I don't want you to take it lightly. Self-love, loving yourself, is the keys to the kingdom, because it is the root cause of pretty much every conflict you've ever gone through. It is the root cause of why you don't speak up. It is the root cause of why you don't speak your truth. It's the root cause of why you have toxic relationships, why you're in a codependent situation, why your life is possibly under a great deal of chaos right now. And that's the root cause, and it's the cure. It is the cure for all of them, because if you trace that down and you don't actually get that right, not only does your life become chaotic and your relationships with other people become completely toxic and chaotic, but actually you can see it tracing down and impacting your health. So if you have an autoimmune problem, this is for you. If you have a chronic illness, this is for you. If you've been diagnosed with any digestive, inflammatory bowel condition, or reproductive organ system situation, autoimmune, cancer, you name it, you cannot skip out on what we're about to share in today's show if you want to actually heal, because the name of the game is about healing. And you can't heal if you are judging, abandoning, blaming, and shaming yourself, as what my good friend Dr. Russell Kennedy calls JABS, this acronym that he came up with. Judging, abandoning, blaming, and shaming ourselves is the antithesis of self-love. So today I'm going to share with you, and hopefully we have some questions if this is relevant. I know we have a few people on right now, and we have a couple amazing guests that are going to share with you their journey. But how do you get back into self-love? How did I? What was the path? Because I remember at that time, I could look in a mirror and I was like, oh my God, I hate you, okay? Not only that, but my appearance appeared ugly to me. I know you might be looking at me saying, wow, that you're devilishly handsome. I get it, but there was a time where I actually looked in the mirror and I was like, I didn't like the way I looked. And when you don't love yourself, guess what, how you treat yourself, guess what your self-care habits, guess what your food intake is like, guess what your exercise and movement patterns are like when you don't love yourself. Pretty shitty. So I had to turn this around, and there wasn't anything out there like as far as a program that I could see that could get me that specific outcome. So I had to come up with it myself. I literally piecemealed everything together from what I knew before, because I'm a ninja when it comes to clearing past events, because I've created this method called the overview method, which takes whatever past traumas and challenges, helps you shift that story. I'm a ninja for that. But I could not handle my own triggers in the moment. When I would get activated, my reactivity blocked me from being able to have intimacy with other people, blocked my relationships, and I took a look around me and I wasn't really pleased with the way things were going. So I went on this journey that I'm going to share with you what steps that I took, and then share with you a couple stories, and then we're going to give you kind of like a list, Self-Love 101, so you can tick it off and then make this a part of your day, because it's a practice. This is the key, is that it's a practice. So the first thing that you're going to do to restore self-love is to regulate your nervous system. We must start there, because consider the possibility that the traumas that you've gone through in your past, you're still holding on to them in your body, and they're causing a dysregulation. And when you have a dysregulated nervous system, your perceptions are altered. So you can't see things straight. You can't see things clearly. You always see, separation from other people. It impairs, when your nervous system is dysregulated, it impairs your ability to visualize a future. I couldn't see a future. This is what people who are suicidal, they want to kill themselves, they want to end it all, is because they don't actually see a future for themselves. No wonder, because their nervous systems are dysregulated. You cannot see a future when you're in fight or flight or freeze. You're basically in the here and now. There's a separation of us versus them. Everything as well, next thing, how you can tell if your nervous system is dysregulated, everything feels like a threat, and you do not feel safe in your body. I didn't feel safe in my body, and I was easily triggered. I can sit here and make excuses as to why the volatility happened, and how we triggered each other, and I was pushed into that. But at the end of the day, if my nervous system was regulated properly, which is, I believe, episode number 2 on YouTube, make sure you check it out. I'll give you the steps of how to get there. It's work involved, but it's critical work. When you get your nervous system regulated, you are able to withstand getting activated by somebody and getting triggered. You're in your body, you're calm, you have a vision for the future, you don't see separation, you're connected to feelings, and you're reassociated in your body. The next part of what I had to do was to really, truly clear my past resentments. I was unwittingly holding on to resentments towards my mother and father, and I was pretending like I was really clear of them. So what I actually did was, after the breakup happened last year, I moved back in with my parents. I put my place up on Airbnb and rented it out, and I just moved in with my parents so that I could do the necessary work to clear my resentments, because I knew that any past resentments that I had towards mom, dad, ex-partners, business associates that I was holding on to were like carrying rocks in my backpack. And I could not climb this mountain of life and create a beautiful future if I'm holding on to these past resentments. Also, regrets. The regrets that I had as well. Past resentments include resentments towards the self. This is key towards self-love, because think of the things that you're regretting. So I had these massive regrets about getting divorced. I had regrets about changing careers. I had all of these regrets, and I had to do the necessary work. And I created a methodology to dissolve those resentments, and it's called the overview method, and I had to use that, but I couldn't use it if my nervous system was dysregulated. That is a key component. This is the cognitive work that cannot work if your nervous system is in dysregulation. You're in fight or flight or freeze. Now, the next part is you gotta learn to dance with your dark passenger. I had to actually, in order for you to love yourself, I wanna say this, in order for you to love yourself, you have to first get reacquainted with who you actually are. And by reacquainted with who you actually are, what I'm talking about is all parts of you. All parts of you. So you have a light and you have a shadow. I have a light and a shadow. I have a kind part of me and a cruel part of me. And that tape is running constantly. So I had to do the dance with my dark passenger, that little part of me that says I'm not enough, that little whisper that says you're not good enough, you're not worthy, and it's trying to keep me safe, okay? I had to start to observe myself. I had to start to observe my thoughts, and I had to dance. This is what I mean by dance with my dark passenger. As the thoughts would come up, I would become a witness to them. Some places call this shadow work, ego work. This is basically taking a look at your ego, which is protecting that wounded inner child within you. And so it's to be able to be a witness to it. So I had to actually look, and by dancing with my dark passenger, it's a commitment. It's an ongoing work that me and the clients that we work with are 100% committed to. And so we work at really dancing with that and watching the thoughts that come through and not believing them to be true, first of all, and questioning them. So in other words, you must be able to cultivate the skill of separating yourself from your thoughts. That took me several months to practice. And this is the work that we do with our clients. It's a practice, and we do it together. And this is the key, is to watch your thoughts, to be able to separate yourself from them, and then to inquire the validity of them, and then to change them towards the outcomes that you're looking for. Now, when you unfuck that nervous system and you clear those past resentments, all of a sudden this scatterbrain that you have turns into a state of presence. And you're now present in your body, you're a lot calmer. And when you clear those past resentments and you learn how to dance with your dark passenger, you develop a sense of understanding. Understanding not only for those people that you resent from your past, but also an understanding of yourself. You see the innocence of yourself, which we're going to talk about a little bit later, is really critical to you clearing your guilt and shame, which is blocking your ability to have connection to self-love, guilt and shame. So when you learn how to dance with your dark passenger and you clear the resentments and regrets in your life, you now have a sense of understanding for yourself. You have compassion towards yourself and empathy towards yourself, not only towards the other people that you've been kind of conflicting and combating with, but most importantly, you get it, you understand yourself. That's the key to be able to love yourself, is to understand yourself. To be able to say, oh, fuck, no wonder I did that. It's so obvious to me why that happened. Without doing that, you're constantly beating the crap out of yourself, wondering why you're not in great relationships and your health is crap, because you're just grab that hammer and you're beating yourself up. And when you learn how to dance with your dark passenger and you have a regulated nervous system, you get the holy grail of what we're looking for in relationships. This is what you're looking for in a relationship, is authenticity. It's your ability to take off the mask and be seen and heard by another person, and to be able to see and hear another. And the way that we do that is through the next step, which is learning empathic communication. Empathic communication and learning how to connect with others, that was a big constraint of mine. I didn't really have access to empathy when I was so dysregulated and disconnected from myself. How can I have empathy towards other people? But once I did all that, I learned empathic communication, and now empathy has become my superpower. It's pretty cool. And then not only empathy towards others, but empathy towards myself. That's the key. I think we had an episode, check it out on YouTube, Narcissism versus Empathy. We talk a little bit about empathic communication. It's pretty cool that way. And none of this is possible without a commitment and a community of people who are dedicated to the same thing. See, if you're not investing in a community with a conversation that's higher level, you're likely going to be hanging out with friends and family. No offense, I'm sure you have people in your life that are fantastic. But if they're like most people, the conversations are about constraints, complaints, gripes, grievances, what's not working, and that just brings you down, and it doesn't really foster a connection to self-love. So it's really important that you're committed to this practice and you're involved in some community that's dedicated to the same thing, that'll allow you to feel safe, to be seen and heard for the truth of who you are. And so you get fulfillment and authenticity that way. And when you get all of that right, you get this holy grail of love for others and love for self. And that's when life starts to turn into magic. So what happened was, as a result of doing this work, I felt more centered, my anxiety levels went down. I then learned how to communicate effectively with other people. Business started to transform and boom because I was more regulated, because I was able to connect with other people, and the outcome was really about sharing, was really about intimacy. I was able to foster a deeper connection with friends, deeper connection with family, deeper connection with clients, and I just had to share that with the world. And so we're going to go over Self-Love 101, like the steps of going through specifically self-love, but this is the path to victory for you in order to get there. There's some subcategories we're going to go over, but I wanted to introduce somebody very important right now, one of our clients who basically went through a very similar thing. I want to introduce Joe. And Joe is an engineer. He was an engineer, and he was working in defense products, missiles, defense products, like so in the United States. And so he gets into a situation where he was completely lost in a relationship limbo, where he got really bad news one day, and he basically realized that he didn't know who the heck he was. His wake-up call was like mine and like many others, which was a relationship breakdown. Without further ado, I just want to have him kind of introduce the story a little bit. Joe, welcome.
Hi, thank you for the introduction.
Thanks for being here. So Can you share a little bit about, you just heard me share a little bit about my journey of going through that into self-love and connection with self and intimacy, upgrading my intimacy towards self and others. Can you share a little bit about what was going on in your life? What was happening when you decided to reach out and have our first phone conversation on the discovery call?
Sure, my story starts in Abu Dhabi. I'm on a 4-month deployment and 7,000 miles away from home. And I'm there for about 9 days before I get the news from my wife that, after 15 years of marriage, she's gonna do something else, and we're gonna, separate and ultimately divorce. I wasn't expecting that in any capacity.
That must have been great news to hear one day. And what happened after that?
This was only. I wasn't prepared for it.
Jason, I just want to point out something. This wasn't too far in the past. This was quite recent, only a few months ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, December 18th. Yeah, was when I started that, and we went through discussions for a few months, and it was just about 3.5 months ago that it was clear to me that we were going to go through and have the divorce.
So we got on a call, and you realized that you didn't know who the heck you were. Your biggest constraint at that time was, I don't know, can we make this work?
Oh yeah.
Can we make this work? And you were really hell-bent in bettering yourself so that you can make the marriage work, right? You remember what I said to you on that call.
Yeah, basically, I was you saw something, you saw what I needed, but I felt like I needed to fix the situation so that I could save the marriage. Your advice was, we're gonna get Joe good with being Joe, so it doesn't matter if he's married or not.
Bingo.
So that was a tough sell because I've never done any personal development stuff before, and all of these concepts didn't make sense to me as an engineer. But ultimately, I decided to believe in it, and I made that investment and committed to the process.
Yeah, that was a scary moment for you, wasn't it? You
Oh
were
yeah.
basically like, I've never done anything like this before. You had met me on a recommendation, so it was like you weren't sure. And I was basically saying, look, I can't predict the outcome that your marriage is going to be saved. All I can do is self-love 101, which is we got to get Joe good with Joe, whether he's married or not. End of discussion. And whatever happens after that, whether you guys reconnect, a lot of times our clients, they reconnect and it's stronger than ever. And other times they, consciously uncouple, but that was the goal. And so we took you through this process, and, this whole process of connecting with that inner child and all that. Do you want to share a little bit about what your biggest constraint was and what that process was like for you when we went through and you went on through your intimacy upgrade?
Right. So we had two instances where you brought me to see my inner child. The first one was actually on our very first call, which was just a couple of days after I joined the group. And on that one, we were in a group call, and we separated. All the men went to one line and the women went to the other line. And you brought us men into a meditation to ground ourselves, and then you had us turn inside and look for our inner child and comfort him. So that was, in my mind, I'm thinking, oh my God, like, this is what I paid for, like. And then my second thought was, well, he's already got my money, so I'm going to give it a shot. So I did that, and I was kind of actually surprised to see that, like, oh yeah, there's my inner child. And it was curious to me because he's like, in my vision, he's sitting there like he's alone and scared in like a dark area in this room that we're in, and sort of like half hiding behind some object that's there. I saw him, and I got a feeling of really repulsion. Like I didn't like him. I was very much repulsed, and like I kind of like stepped back, and that was like typical for me. Like
that's
at
how you
that point in my life, and going back, I wasn't able to connect with children in any capacity. So that's kind of like how it was. Like, yeah, Joe doesn't like kids don't like Joe, like they stay apart, and it was just like that. And so
also, Joe, can you also see that you were showing up in life like that little kid, kind of hiding, not letting other people see you? There was no intimacy in your life and no intimacy in your marriage. Everything was just like that little kid.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't connect that until now, but yeah, that's, to me now, that's obvious. Yeah.
So then that was our first time you tried to see him. You were like, what is this weird stuff? Because you're an engineer working for defense products, right? You do missiles and stuff. So
right.
It's kind of weird. And believe me, it was the same with me. When I was first introduced to it, and I was like, okay, are you freaking kidding me? But lo and behold, you try to connect, and you had a repulsion, both from him and from you. Keep going. So what?
Yeah. So we just ran our separate ways. He went back into the dark part of the room, and I just threw my hands up and went away. It was a moment of absolute separation, and in that moment, it was actually interesting because I was actually on a date at that time, right? And I'm at it's midnight in Abu Dhabi, right? So I'm at the Rosewood Hotel, 5-star hotel, and I was like, oh, sorry, honey, I'm gonna go and outside on this meeting. Right, and I got on that call not knowing what I was getting into. I got so freaked out, so dissociated from my emotions. I never went back. I went down in the lobby, and I sat there. I couldn't feel. I actually was like dissociated from emotion. I couldn't feel anything for a couple of days. That moment for me was really super impactful.
Yeah.
To like just see the inner child, to realize like you don't like each other and you can't even be in the same space, and to, run away from yourself like that was something I wasn't at all prepared for it. I didn't know what I was getting myself into when I casually got on that phone call.
Yeah. And then you discovered that there was a dissociation between you and your little one in there.
Mm-hmm.
And then kind of how did things shift? Can you talk a little bit about that? Because now you've realized a big obstacle. You're like, holy shit, no wonder. You're like, I'm completely dissociated. How am I gonna ever complete this? How am I gonna ever solve this?
So I feel like the first element to me that was critical for this was to learn my values and boundaries, and like we learned in our course, to live congruently according to the highest values and schedule them into the day.
Yeah.
And that really got me an element of feeling connected. Really like myself, like the self that I remember feeling like, 20 years ago.
Yourself.
Yeah, right.
After you connected to your values, and then what was that moment where everything completely shifted? That moment where it all just came together for you, and then you got connected to love and self-love.
Right. So again, back in our group, this was in the Facebook group, I shared about progress that I was making towards accepting my divorce and my situation, and that I was still struggling with a part of myself that was always trying to go back. Like, I could feel like I'm good with the divorce, and then all of a sudden I'd want to reconcile, right? And I was fighting that part of myself. And the constant stream of advice I was getting back from yourself and my other coaches and others in the group was to love the part of myself that wanted to reconcile. And that's very counterintuitive because, in my opinion, at the time, the part of myself that wanted to reconcile was the part of myself that was causing the problem.
Was the weak part.
Yeah. Exactly. So I'm trying to, have an exorcism and get that part out of me.
Yeah.
And what I really came to learn was the part of me that I needed to love was actually a 17-year-old version of myself, but a different inner self that was struggling with the very similar unhealed wounds from prior relationships that 17-year-old kids go through at that time. And I went to the overview seminar that Nima held in Vancouver, and at that seminar it was the first time that I was able to reconnect with my 17-year-old wounded child very successfully. I think because we like and understand each other, we're into the same stuff. It was very easy for me to relate to that version of myself. And so I got that strong connection there. We together we healed the past trauma that he was suffering back then. And then I was able to use that, bring it forward and apply it to my current relationship, and ultimately dissolve any feelings of resentments or anything I was feeling.
Beautiful.
Associated to the divorce.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So Joe, so we cleared the resentment from your past, cleared the resentment from your divorce, all of that within that period of time. Can you share a little bit about how you connected to empathy after your first overview, when we do the overview method, and how you had this weird, because you grew up with your connection to spirituality was through the Catholic Church. And after growing up, you were like, you kind of distanced yourself from it, which many people do. And then you just thought spirituality, it's whatever. And we went through our first overview session together. And can you explain a little bit, really briefly, about what you noticed happened right after?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'll downplay it a little bit, but I had what can only be described as a spiritual awakening very shortly after having my first overview experience, where all sorts of things that happened around us just started to make sense in big ways. And I connected to a sense of empathy that I never had before. It was always a word that I'd have to keep going back and looking up, what's the difference between empathy and sympathy. I'd have to look it up, right? But because I couldn't feel it.
Couldn't feel it.
And what I noticed immediately, just after that overview,
just for context,
the next day.
Joe, just for context, in that overview, we literally get you connected with empathy with that 4-year-old version of you that you were dissociated from. So you were finally able to empathize with him, and all of a sudden you were connected to yourself. So then go ahead, and then what happened after that?
Yeah, the very next day I noticed, I'm just going through my routine. I'm at the gym, and the same pictures that you walk by where they show you like the fat guy and the before and after pictures where you can see, and I walked by and it caught my eye, and I was like, whoa, like I could feel his feelings, his proudness, and then I went to the next picture and I could feel what that person was feeling, and I stood there like I was at an art gallery looking at all the photos, because it was a feeling that I've never felt before.
Presence.
And then, all throughout the days, all of my interactions with people that have always been all around me, family, friends, co-workers, all of those relationships immediately 10 times richer, and I'm present with them and I'm interacting differently, right? Before,
beautiful.
In hindsight, I can see like I'm doing things that like aren't always like nice guy things to do, not even realizing that I'm doing it because I'm incapable of sensing what that feels like in another person.
You got connected with empathy, didn't you? And so afterwards, all of a sudden, not only have you cleared the resentment, how are you with wanting to save the marriage, and the other thing, which is connection to children, which was that was your constraint. What's changed with those things now?
Right. So the marriage situation, I'm completely neutral in it. I got our intention where I'm good with myself, and it doesn't matter if I'm married or not, or who I'm married to. My wife is welcome to stay in my life. We're currently like happily cohabitating in this house together, and planning futures, and how and when we separate and to what degree happens over time, peacefully in a way that works for both of us. And I'm about to start the mediation processes this week, and I'm really like to be in this frame of mind to start that is awesome.
Amazing.
So
I mean, I wish I took a video of our first conversation to compare to how you are now, how self-expressed you are, and how different you feel. It's amazing. It's what a gift to be able to see that. But here's the key. What happened to your relationship with children when you were able to reconnect with that energy?
Oh yeah. So just like I was saying earlier, where I feel repulsed and want to be distant from children, and the noises that they make and the messes they make, or the way they would bring up the sense of anxiety for me. Instead, now last weekend, I went to a baseball game with my nephew, and he's 4.
How old is he?
He's 4.
Coincidentally, he's the same age as that inner child that you are.
Yeah. No, it's not a coincidence. That's just how this stuff works, right?
Amazing.
Yeah. So we had a great time. We like his little balloon broke and he started crying. So I know how to twist balloons. So I made it into a sword, and then he didn't like that because it wasn't as big. So I made it into a dog, and he loved that, and he was happy. And we caught a foul ball, which is like the best thing that can happen to a kid at a baseball game, right?
That's amazing.
And then when I was, it was time, game's over, time to go home. He started crying because he wanted me to go home and play with him. And then I had to walk away because I didn't want to get emotional too. But that's just it's just a moment that not only was I not capable of experiencing, but I wouldn't even want to experience that in my prior self just a few months ago.
Amazing. Joe, thank you so much for sharing. Is there anything that you would like to share to somebody who's listening, who's kind of on the fence about going through that process and the courage it takes? Because it took courage. Remember, it took courage. It's not easy for you to go to those places, especially for an engineer who's been completely dissociated from his feelings, his emotions, his inner child, all of that stuff. What would you say to somebody who's like scared about making that level of a commitment?
Yeah, I mean, if you're scared about the commitment, I'd say find the right coach, find somebody you trust. For me, it was Nima. He did an awesome job, and it says it's the first video I think in the module says it starts with a breath, and it's just that easy. Go through the process. Believe in yourself, and surrender to the process. Trust the concepts, and let them do their thing.
Dude, thank you so much, Joe. Hey, I told you 3 months ago that you'd be sharing your story publicly on live. What would you? That's pretty.
No, so honestly, if I had known that, I would have joined your VIP program, and I'd have paid a bunch more. This was awesome, and this content that you're giving us right now, like, I'm super excited to be part of this trigger-proof episode. And like you said, keys to the kingdom, like, the fact that it's very generous that this is free content from the government.
Yeah,
so
absolutely, awesome. Brother. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here.
Right.
And, I don't know what to tell you. I want to cry right now, but I want to say I love you, man.
Thank you.
Thank you. Awesome. And we're going to get another story here in just a moment to share. Valerie's going to come on and share what she went through in the process of self-love. But something that Joe talked to me about just a couple of days ago on our kind of like final offboarding call, he said, so what happens with this self-love? Like when do you get there? And I basically said, I just want you to understand, you don't get there. It is a practice. This does not stop. In other words, we tell our clients, your program doesn't stop. These are the tools. This is for life. It's a practice for life. It's like, okay, so I've gone to the gym, I've lost 20 pounds, I'm done. I made it, right? No. Living a healthy lifestyle is a practice. So is self-love. So I wanted to share with you a few self-love tips, 101, self-love 101, so that you can actually, and it kind of, Joe touched upon them in our interview, but I want to kind of really hammer them home for you so that you really get this. So the first thing he talked about is, for self-love 101, is to know your values. Okay, you must know what your values are and live them unapologetically. That's your first constraint. So this is what we do when we get you into the program, and it's part of unfucking your nervous system, by the way, is living according to your highest values. That's why I do this. Teaching is one of my highest values. I created this show to help me not only disperse some amazing content and information that will help transform lives, but I did it as a practice of self-love because I know what my values are, and teaching is one of my highest values. It's my superpower, so I put that into my schedule. Number 2, you must learn how to connect with your inner child. Reparenting, this is what we talked about with Joe. So inside of you, there is a little boy or a little girl who feels not good enough, not wanted, like they don't matter, and there was some sort of a trauma or several series of traumas that you've endured, which has caused you to dissociate from that child, just like it happened with Joe. And so in order for you to heal and self-heal, this is all about self-healing, because it's not Nima or Dr. Russ that healed Joe, it was Joe that healed Joe. We're raising a community of self-healers. That's really my purpose. And you can't do that without reconnecting with that little boy or little girl inside of you who feels abandoned, who feels betrayed, who feels like they can't trust. You must connect with that and learn how to give them exactly what they need. Okay? And that's an ongoing process. I'm literally doing it right now. Okay? It's kind of like having my little 3-year-old there, and those of you, I mean, you've seen previous episodes, you can see it right here. I'll show you. I'm just opening my phone, taking away. Right there, that's my inner child right there. You can see. So connecting with them. So we get all of our clients to put a picture of your 3-year-old self, 4-year-old self, the one that you're ashamed of, the one that you're embarrassed of, the one that went through that trauma, and reconnecting emotionally, energetically, and giving them everything that they felt that they were missing growing up. Okay? So in those difficult times, and when you get triggered, it's oftentimes, and when you get anxiety, it's oftentimes your inner child screaming for attention. So you must learn how to reparent that inner child. The next part is to dissolve the guilt and the shame. Why that's important. See, if you've done things that you regret and you're ashamed of, kind of like what I shared earlier on, my work was to go, and the way that you dissolve the guilt and shame, my work was to go and see the innocence of the unconsciousness that did whatever it is that you feel ashamed about. So I'm going to say that again. Let me say that again. You must, in order to dissolve the guilt and the shame, you must do the necessary work to go back and truly see the innocence of the unconsciousness that behaved the way that you did, that said yes to that relationship. So when I look back and I see who I was at the time when I got together in my last relationship, it was the perfect person for me. It was the perfect storm of how I felt about myself, my levels of trauma that were stuck in my body, my emotional dysregulation, the fact that my ego was driving the bus, and I wanted to prove to the world and to my parents that I could leave my chiropractic practice and succeed, and how I completely disempowered myself by giving all of the power of the company to run the company to my partner, who I was also sleeping with, who also had her traumas and dramas and core attachment wounds and codependencies, where I put myself in a position where my business could be used against me to attack me. Of course, I became threatened and volatile. Of course, I was in such fear. I wasn't actually a monster. I was a little child who was completely disempowered himself and felt threatened in those moments when things would get volatile, because her core attachment wounds were able to really know, and she's highly intelligent, know exactly which buttons to push to get me to fly off the handle. And this is not a blame game. I'm just saying I completely understand and see the innocence of 2 3-year-olds who are warring at each other. And that's the only way that I've been able to look myself in the mirror and actually go, oh, I see you, I get you, I love you. Because I'm able to see the innocence of that person who behaved the way that he did. And so I want you to think of what you feel guilty about and ashamed about, and I want you to understand that is a core attachment wound that you didn't know how to get met any other way. You didn't have the education that's available to you for free off the internet, or a coach that you would really want to invest in to solve the problem. You actually didn't know. You were unconscious. So you must see the innocence of the unconsciousness that got you there. And when you get that right, all of a sudden you see understanding for yourself and the others. And all of a sudden your heart is open to gratitude and love, and self-love becomes available when you do that. The next part, I don't know if you can see there, I know there's a light beaming here. The next part is to tell the truth. As difficult as that is, what we know to be true with human interactions and the human psyche is that truthful conversations redeem people. I'm going to say that again. Truthful conversations redeem people. So once you uncover a lie, once you uncover an inauthenticity, it is important that you go and you tell the truth. And I'm sharing a truth, and I'm not sure what the outcome is going to be, but I'm standing firm in that it is my truth, and that I feel good about that. And I know that redemption is possible for anyone if they're willing to tell the truth, because we all have a dark passenger. And all of a sudden, when you connect with somebody, there's a redeeming quality in being honest and forthright with them. And I can tell you, you cannot have self-love without it. You cannot have a healthy relationship without it. You cannot have a healthy company without it. You have to learn how to tell the truth. And for some people, that's terrifying. So we teach people how to get there as well. And the next one I wanted to share, this one I got from my homegirl, Dr. Nicole LaPera, and I wanted to share this, is to keep at least one promise to yourself every day. I want you to think about it. Keep one promise to yourself at least every single day. Think about it right now, because if you have somebody who has a promise, who promised you something, and they delivered it to you on that promise, how do you feel about them? You respect them. I asked Kim, I was talking to Kim, my assistant Kim, about all of these that I was going to share with you today, and she was like, that's a really good one. I said, how do you feel when somebody delivers on a promise to you? And you're like, she said, I really respect them a lot. I said, great. And when you have a promise that you've promised to somebody and you deliver it to them, what does that mean? It means, she said, well, it means that person is really worthy. You know, you have a high regard for that person that you want to deliver, you want to, keep your promise to. So check this out. Keep at least one promise to yourself every day. For me, I kept a promise that I was going to meditate and I was going to go to the gym today. And because before this broadcast, because I kept that promise, the fact that I delivered on that promise send the message that I am worthy of being, of delivering that promise to myself. And all of a sudden, when I delivered that promise to myself, I walked out and I had a deep sense of respect for myself for delivering on that promise. So if you want self-love, one thing that you can do is to deliver one promise to yourself, at least every day. Start with one and then make it a habit. This is a practice. Remember, this is a practice. Because if you don't get that right, what happens is you start to betray yourself, and then you don't trust yourself. And then you go in this downward spiral, you don't love yourself. You betray yourself, then you don't trust yourself, and you sure as shit won't love yourself. So it's important that you keep a promise. I've kept a promise for the last 17 weeks. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do an episode of Trigger Proof so that I can share what is most meaningful to me to you. And that's a promise that I've kept every single week. And every time this practice of self-love, my self-love expands. My opinion of myself really expands, not in an egotistical way, but in a self-loving, fulfilling type of way. Keep one promise to yourself every day. And a bonus is this, here's the bonus that I'm going to share, is you must have an incremental, graduated, voluntary exposure to something scary. Okay, let me repeat that. You must have an incremental, voluntary exposure to something scary every day. Every day or on a regular basis. Why do you think I do this show? Before I hit live, I get a little bit nervous. I share meaningful things of my past that are quite shameful. That's a little bit scary, but I know that every time I push the envelope a little bit, I'm expanding my level of self-love because I'm voluntarily exposing myself incrementally, gradually to scary shit. That's why I do this show. It's not just for you, it's for me. It's for me as part of my practice of self-love. That's a little bonus for you as well. So, truthful conversations redeem people, and you must scare yourself. Speaking of scaring yourself, I would love to invite Valerie. Welcome. Tell us where you live and what you do.
I'm in Northern California, the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, and I'm a paralegal in a law firm.
Beautiful. So here you are. Tell us what your average everyday life was like before you reached out to me.
Let's see. I'd wake up a bit with some anxiety, not wanting to go and see anybody. I'm married. We had a good relationship, so that wasn't an issue. But I would go to work and I would hole up in my office all day. I would avoid seeing people. If I had to talk to somebody on the phone, I felt like I had to close the door because I didn't want anyone to hear what I would say. Not that I was saying anything secret. It's just, I guess I felt like was being judged. Even though I wasn't being judged, it just felt like, oh, what will they think if I handle this phone call in this way? You know, maybe they'll think I'm handling the call the wrong way.
So you were afraid of being judged, and you were also afraid of being actually seen, weren't you?
Yes, I would. When I'd have to go to the kitchen to, get some tea or something, if I heard anybody in the hallway, I'll just wait until they're gone.
Wow.
And I wouldn't, yeah, just plan my trips to the kitchen around, there's not many people in there right now. This is a good time.
And what was it like? What was it like with you have daughters?
I have a son and a daughter, and they're both away at college. I think that's what, them both being gone, it was like, okay, I need to focus on myself. I'm a mess.
Yeah. So you had anxiety, and what was your health like? What was it? What was your health like? Because a lot of times people would reach out to me for health problems, and then we would go to the emotional root cause. What was your health like?
I was having migraines, and I'd been having them since I was a kid. I was zeroing in on my nutrition, and I completely, it was like 100% eating healthy and drinking only water and just reading and just devouring material on, the way I should be eating, the way I should be living. But the migraines weren't
able to solve it.
No, they weren't going away.
So then you scared the crap out of yourself. You jumped in and you said, all right, and let's do this. And so what was the big shift for you? What did you notice was the biggest shock and surprise and transformation here? But before you say that, what was your opinion about yourself? What was your definition of, like, when you looked in a mirror, and how did you feel about yourself?
I had extremely low self-esteem, and at times, at the most stressful times, or the times of the most anxiety, I just hated myself. And I had even looked in the mirror before and said, I hate you.
Amazing. Yeah, I'm sure that anybody watching can relate to that. So you jumped in and you went through all of this process that I just shared. You've been listening in on the call, I'm sure. What was the most relevant for you? That was the biggest kind of shift as we've been teaching you how to regulate your nervous system, clear the past resentment, and learn how to listen to that voice and kind of shift it around. What was the big thing that shifted for you? How did that change?
Probably the reparenting. I think that's what helps me the most.
Yeah, and there's a noise going on in the background. Is there something going on around you there?
Yeah, do you want me to move?
Yeah, of course. It sounds like there's a sprinkler or something. The benefits of a live broadcast. So my question to you is, what was the biggest shift? I mean, we did a session, and you also had a resentment towards your past, towards your mother, right? What was the big shift for you there?
Yes, you helped me see that my mother was the reason, or for all the my favorite things, being outdoors, art, nature. You helped me realize that if it wasn't for my experience with my mother as a child, that I wouldn't have any of those in my life.
That was beautiful. I'll never forget it. I was in San Francisco at the time on a business trip, and we met in person for our first session. And going through the overview method, we went back and connected to your little, I guess it was 8-year-old. It was your 8-year-old self, right? That was feeling the resentment towards her mother and resentment towards herself, feeling like she didn't belong. And we went through that process of reparenting and reconnecting and changing the story about mom. And what did you notice shift with your relationship with your mother after we took on the whole reparenting and really changing the story with mom? What did you notice happen? What was it like before and then after?
Before, I had a wall up around her. Every time I saw her, I just felt myself close off and didn't really want to share anything too personal with her, just kind of very surface talks. And, yes, I considered her my mother, but it didn't feel the same. I even had in my cell number, in my cell phone, I had her with her first name versus mom. And after after we met, and you had me call her and tell her, do the what is it? I can't think of the word right now. Authenticity call.
Yeah, you shared you shared your inauthenticities with her. You told her the truth about what you discovered.
Yeah. I just felt so much love for her, and changed even changed the name in my cell phone contact back to mom.
Amazing.
But every time I thought of her after that, I just lit up instead of having this, like a dreadful feeling. Just more of a burden, but now it's just love now.
Amazing. And so ever since then, can you share what's been different about your anxiety, your migraines, and your relationship with your kids, and the way that you show up at work now?
I'm way more self-expressed. I'm myself around people. I'm more comfortable in my own skin, which was a huge issue for me. I haven't had a migraine now in probably 40 days now, which is pretty unheard of for me. I usually have about 7 or 8 per month. I've even had some events that lately that normally trigger a migraine for me 100%, and I still haven't had one. I'm just more like I said, I'm more open with people now, and I'm not afraid to express myself.
Well, I mean, if I told you, it's kind of like what I shared with Joe, if I told you a few months ago that you would be on a Facebook Live, sharing your story like publicly, what would you have said?
I would laugh and I'd say, you don't know me very well.
So can you see, we all talk about self-love being this thing that, okay, let's get to self-love, but can you see that it has emerged? What have you noticed has emerged as far as your expression when you look in a mirror now, having gone through the entire process?
Oh, now I feel all the love for myself. I'm proud to be me, and now I say I love you instead of I hate you.
Valerie, thank you. I love you for coming on here and being so brave and sharing your story. I mean, I'm so delighted that you agreed to coming on and sharing your story. I know it was scary. Remember when I said incremental voluntary exposure? They're my clients, so I kind of told them, by the way, you coming on live and sharing your story, as scary as it is, you voluntarily doing it is part of self-love. So thank you for the practice of it and allowing everybody who's watching to benefit from your experience to show what's possible for them as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. And last thing, what would you say to somebody who is looking in a mirror and is not able to truly feel the feelings you feel towards yourself? What would you say to that person who's kind of on the fence about going through a process like this?
I would say that while yes, there are some very uncomfortable moments, it's so worth it to go through a little uncomfort for a short period of time and have a lifetime of being able to handle things and love yourself and just grow.
Thank you so much. Wise words, my dear. See you and have a beautiful rest of the day and weekend.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye. So there you have it. I gotta say, it's quite rewarding and fulfilling to go through a shitty period of my life, to go through a specific process and commit to saying, you know what, if I can find a way to love myself after going through what I went through, and to this day, I still have little text messages and little notes of haters and people who are still feeling quite resentful and betrayed about everything that happened, expecting me to be kind of inhuman and superhuman rather than a human being that I am. To be able to go through that shitty process and shitty time that we went through so that I could come through on the other side and then share what I've learned with you, and then the clients that we see and the people who are brave enough to say, you know what, I'm standing for myself, I'm important, I want to raise the level of my entire family, I want to take it on by loving myself, because a rising tide lifts all boats. What Valerie didn't share is that her relationship with her kids has transformed as well, because the best gift that you can give your children is to love yourself more, because you're more present for them, so that if you're not present for them, you just perpetuate the cycles of trauma because you're so detached from yourself, they will be detached from themselves. So it is, I'm gonna say this is gonna sound quite bold, it is your duty and obligation as a parent, as a business owner, as a human being, to love yourself as much as possible, because if you don't, you're no good to anybody, period. End of discussion. This was a very heart-opening episode. Hopefully you got a lot out of it. You got some tools to be able to move through, to take action. Send me a direct message if you have any questions about it, you want to have us look at your specific case specifically to see if that's possible for you to get the same results that you saw Valerie and Joe have. I want to say a big thank you to Valerie and Joe for being here and for sharing this story. A big thank you to Kim and Eilina, who are members of my team, and everybody in the Measurable Genius who works alongside me as well, kind of in the back burner. And most importantly, I want to thank you. Thank you for paying attention. Thank you for your messages. Thank you for the feedback that we're getting. We're constantly improving this. This has been a labor of love for me, and I am not going to stop. This is something that I truly feel very, very committed to, because I think that we can transform the conversation so that we can raise a new generation of self-healers, so that we don't perpetuate the cycles of trauma and then have all sorts of chaos that happen in our lives and our relationships and our health and our careers and our connection to purpose. Because trigger proof doesn't mean trigger less, but it actually means being completely responsible for your state, reparenting the parts of you that you haven't yet fully healed from, healing those emotional wounds so that you can be better for yourself and other people, because the world needs the greatest version of you. See you next week, same time, same station, and we'll see you at the next perfect time.